Welcome, everybody, to our NCAI Task Force on the NAHASDA Reauthorization. This is Jackie Johnson-Peda. I'm the Executive Director of National Congress of American Indians. And we are privileged today to be able to have our former president of NCAI, President Joe Garcia, who has been appointed by President Jefferson Keel to be the chairman of this task force, and Cheryl Cosley, who is, of course, the chairperson for the National American Indian Housing Council, and a longtime friend of mine, and certainly a strong advocate for housing. So we're looking forward to this joint presentation today between NCAI and NAIHC, and the goal of this task force is to really bring together our united voices to strengthen our reauthorization request as we march to the Hill in this very difficult political environment to try to get the attention that we need on housing and push forward for the NAHASDA reauthorization and the critical housing needs in Indian country. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to President Garcia, who will walk us through some slides that he has prepared with our staff person, Gwen Salt. Gwen Salt at NCAI is the housing liaison and takes on the housing issues in her portfolio. And after we have that presentation, we will then go to National American Housing Council with Cheryl Cosley and David Sanborn, who is their new executive director. And then from there, we will open up the lines and we will take questions. Before we get started, let me tell you a little bit about your screen for those of you who may be participating the first time in one of NCAI's webinars. On your right-hand side, you'll see a box. And you'll see in there, in one of those little places, you can see a hand. You'll see a hand. And the hand allows you to raise your hand, particularly when we get to asking questions. And then our administrator here will unclick your line and allow your line to be open. Right now, all lines are closed, so even if you were trying to talk to us, yell at us, scream at us, we weren't going to be able to hear you until the lines are open. But if you want to get our attention, you can raise your hand, and then we'll be able to unmute your line and answer any question that you have. You can also type in your questions on the right-hand side. If you go to questions, and in there you can actually, I'll have us send you all a note so that you can see where you can do that. But you can put your questions in there anytime during the presentation. We can answer those questions even verbally after when we get to the question and answer period, especially if you're listening to something and you don't want to forget that question. Type it in right then and there, and then when we get to the question and answer period, we'll answer that if we don't answer it before that. And we can also just answer to you online if it's a one-on-one question or anything along those lines. So we can answer you during the presentation. I think that kind of answers everything that you would need to know about utilizing this webinar to get the best benefit from it. At the conclusion of this webinar, it will be available on our website, and you'll be able to link to that, pull up the webinar session, and certainly get the slides or any additional information that might be available via this webinar. So once again, I want to thank our presenters for being here today. And for the staff at NCAI and NAIHC for the hard work that they do and moving forward the housing issues. President Garcia.
Yes. Can you hear me all?
Yes. We sure can. They can't answer me, sir.
Good morning, everyone. Number one is that I want to welcome everyone that's on the webinar, and I also want to, at this time, thank the people who helped get this thing going, and Gwen especially, and Brian. And I talked to Dave, and didn't get a chance to talk to Cheryl, but thank you both for being on the webinar. And we'll move through here pretty quickly. Now, you already have the contents showing on the screen, so rather than kind of read through it, you know what we're going to cover today. But let me give my greetings in my Tewa language, please. Bia India, Mana Herin Country, no Ikangima, we were Singwariani down Amo, Abanone, Ansharim, Pore, Ranton, Sansarimopin, nobody Kangima, no, we are Kundal Tapo, we were Singwariani, Thank you very much. So go ahead and move on with the slides, Brian. Second page, second slide. Hello?
It's coming.
Okay.
It's just delaying with the connection.
Slower like.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Well, we all know the people that have been up with the housing and those people that participated in 1997 in the negotiated rulemaking, they're kind of there's no news to them what's going on, but there may be a lot more new tribal leaders and new staff people that are online, and so will be a good session for them as well. But NAHASDA, the first go-around, was enacted in 1996, and the place that a lot of the tribal leaders began to play a role, I think, with the negotiated rulemaking, which was established in 1997. Now, that's really how Joe Garcia got a start in the national scene, and got to know a lot of good people from the housing, attorneys, and tribal leaders. So we did very well in the initial sessions, and both NCAI members and NAIHC members were involved in those sessions. So it brings a lot of memories, but the most important pieces are that it brought a lot of successes with the true partnership, true cooperation, collaborations, and commitment and perseverance in what we were able to accomplish from that point on till now. And so a lot of success stories. You can probably talk to a lot of tribal leaders about that. NAHASDA continued to be reauthorized. It was reauthorized in 2002 and 2008. And so this current authorization is set to expire in September 30th of this year. So that's why it's important that we continue our efforts to move forward. Next slide. In 1996, when the first NAHASDA was enacted, it set forth a number of very, very significant and important agenda items, if you will. One of the most important was this created a block grant for Indian housing, and therefore the monies were made available to the tribes that qualified under the NAHASDA. Now we had to fight very, very hard with the with HUD to ensure that those block grants were made available dollar-wise, and that was very, very successful. So we've seen the successes just of that one piece. Now, the most important piece in terms of policy and approach is that the tribe now, according to the title even, self-determination, tribes were self-determined in how they were going to do their housing. And, you know, one of the stumbling blocks at one point in time was tribal designated housing entities, and many tribes, I remember, did not want to give autonomy to the tribal designated housing entities, but I think we've seen that there's a lot of success in allowing that to happen, and as long as those entities maintain their communications and their collaboration with the tribal governments, it's really, really, really successful. So, but it's really up to the people, the tribes, and the tribal governments who represent their people to make it work. And what I can say is that it has been very, very, very successful. NAHASDA in itself gave a lot of flexibility to tribes, and I think that's the one thing that we can be thankful for, is that you don't wait on a federal entity to do the things that are on this next slide to improve your housing conditions. And I think we also got caught up in, we were thinking that housing is only for low-income tribal members, but we kind of shied away from that later on in saying that housing should be there for all of the tribal members, whether they be low-income, medium-income, or high-income. At least there will be a resource. And I think most entities, housing entities, have operated in that way, and it's very, very good. Increased access to affordable rental housing. If the tribe desires that they want to go into rental homes or rental units like Okewinga has done, we've got apartments established, and we were able to make a greater impact on the number of families that we could house or that we could afford them rental housing, and that's a big plus. But also increase home ownership for tribal members, and I think living off of the tribal land is hard enough to find ownership for homes. Being on tribal land, especially the financial side of it, has been really, really gruesome for many tribal members, and NAHASDA has allowed us to move forward in that venue as well. Next slide. Here are some things that we want to see happen. That there ought to be community and economic development, and so if we're talking about NAHASDA and the new approach and the flexibility that we mentioned, there's going to be job creation within the on tribal lands, and so we're helping our own communities by building capacity, by providing jobs, and sometimes even training sessions, and allowing maybe even part-time students or students to be in work-study form, you might say, to participate in the community and economic development. And one thing that we haven't really mentioned is that the economic development opportunities also allows tribes to work with their construction companies or to establish construction companies, or when you go out and hire a construction company, you can use the tax base within your tribe so that that tax benefit comes into play, and it helps to build the tribal communities, if you will. But those kinds of things are hopefully what we'll be discussing as we move along the track of reauthorizing NAHASDA. Go ahead. We are experiencing audio connection restored. Did you all not hear me?
No, you were fine. We can hear you.
Okay. Maybe I can't hear myself. Okay. The Reauthorization Task Force. Now, please remember that the task force was created by virtue of a resolution that was passed at Sacramento last fall. I don't remember who introduced the resolution, but I understand that it was in collaboration with the housing entities and members of the housing, NAIHC, and the tribes and tribal leaders. So the task force came in and was passed. It was an appropriate approach, and so this task force is working together. And the things that we want to ensure is that we are truly collaborative, that we are working together, and any discussions or any approaches that we may build on is done in unison, and that we want to also operate by concurrence, and so I think that's really what we're about. And we've proven that the old rules and negotiated rulemaking, we were able to do that very, very successfully. So we want to maintain and continue to build those kinds of partnerships. Go ahead. Brian?
Yeah, our internet connection is a bit slow, so just give it a couple seconds to load.
Okay. Well, in terms of mandates, this is the most important piece of the what we're all about, what the task force is all about, what NAIHC is all about, what NCAI is all about, is that this Native American housing and self-determination, we're talking about sovereignty, folks, and sovereignty is the underlying principle for all of our efforts, not only for housing, but for all the other issues that we're addressing as part of our two entities. So what we plan to do, and we are already doing, is to develop and advocate in consultation with all of the tribes and the tribal housing authorities so that we move forward together. We also will be looking for proposed additions and amendments to NAHASDA 13th, and I think there will be some ideas about what kinds of things have been proposed at this point in time, but eventually there will be new things, the ideas that we will develop, and the working environment should allow us to do that pretty easily. We also want to be sure that because we are such a diverse group, and we represent a diverse group of tribes, and if you want to mention how diverse we are, different housing needs up in Alaska, different housing needs in the Gulf Coast area, different housing needs in California, different housing needs in the Southwest, different housing needs in the Southeast. All of those things will be considered, and so that's why it makes it hard to get a legislation that will help us all, but I think what we're doing is going to really, really help us on this one. So we want to be sure that we operate through consensus, and we've been known to be very good at that, and so we'll continue those kinds of efforts. Go ahead. Here are the task force members. Number 1, NCAI and its member tribes. The staff and the resources that they have will be available. NAIHC, the members, their staff, their board, the professional input that they've developed, and the things that they know about, because they're the experts in housing, will be available to all of us. And so it brings relief in saying, well, geez, I don't know about this issue. Well, I know who to call. So that's really good. Tribal leaders from across the land, new ones and old ones, and like I'm an old-timer now. I didn't realize that I was, but I am. So the tribal leaders will have a lot of say-so in what we're doing. The tribal housing entities will be afforded also that opportunity to work with us. And so the all of the technical resources that are available to Indian country will be there available for all of us to call upon. And so it's a comforting feeling, as I said. Go ahead. Okay, here are some of the next steps that we want to do as part of the task force. To begin immediate work on developing tribal housing priorities. And I might say a little bit about the NAIHC. They've already done a whole lot of this, and so the plans are to share and then to disseminate and then to gain a little bit more if we need to, but we'll do it together. The decision to have biweekly or monthly task force teleconferences, that's a given, and that's how we're going to get through. But with technology available to all of us, we want to be sure that we use that technology in a smart way. NCAI, NAHASDA Task Force will have a listserv, and so if anyone wants to be on the listserv, all you've got to do is call Gwen at qsalt@ncai.org, and your name and address will be included in it. So all of the notices and information will be made available to all who wish to participate. Next. Okay, here are a couple of things, and I think Cheryl or Dave will also give you a little bit more about this. That NAIHC Tribal Housing Impact Day, that'll happen next week on the 13th in Washington, D.C. So I'll be there working. Jackie and I will be there to meet with the board and meet with the leaders there, Cheryl and Dave. So that I'm looking forward to doing that. There will be a follow-up for NCI executive session in March. The executive session will begin on March 3rd and run through, I think, the 7th. So we'll gather all of our data, whatever we've got, and share all of that during these two sessions, and then we'll move forward with the congressional meetings. Okay, that's what I've got, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to serve as the chair of the NCAI NAHASDA Reauthorization Task Force. My telephone numbers are there, my email address is there, and Gwen's information is also there. So at this point in time, before we take questions and answers, I'd like to turn it over to Dave and Cheryl for their part of the presentation. So Dave and Cheryl, you're on.
Great. Thank you, Chairman Garcia. We appreciate your kind words there and your leadership. I know you go a long way back in housing issues. And I also want to thank Jackie, Gwen, and Brian, too, and the NCAI staff. We'll be working closely together this next year on housing issues, and we want to make this go as smoothly as possible. And we want NCAI to have that opportunity to make sure that their tribal leaders and our respective elected leaders, I should say, have the opportunity to first of all know what's going on in the field of housing, but also to address this in the coming legislative year. Okay, so next slide, please. So as Chairman Garcia has covered a great deal of the history of what happened, 17 years ago this was passed, but it took a lot longer than that, probably 3 or 4 years of groundwork just to get this going in 1996. But back then, many listeners on this webinar came together to craft a new vision of how federal housing programs would be provided to tribal communities. And the result of that work has been a very successful act as NAHASDA. And I think that we have all of our communities have benefited from this and benefited well. There's still a lot of course, of work to do. Next slide. So what I kind of like to do here in the remaining moments of our speech with you here is to kind of give you what we've done last year to get to this point. Last year, our board of directors, the National American Indian Housing Council's board of directors, established that a task force essentially to reach out to all of our membership across the country to develop recommendations from all of our membership, including tribal leaders, policy professionals, attorneys, and tribal housing professionals, to gain their input. And so we held a series of one-day sessions around the country, and at each session we reviewed each section of NAHASDA and facilitated a discussion on any proposed changes. So all these comments and feedback were recorded. Next slide. And after the conclusion of the outreach session, our staff recorded all those comments, recommendations, and put this into a matrix. The draft matrix was discussed at our annual convention in Anchorage of last year. In July, we kind of passed this off onto our legislative committee within NAIHC. And this committee is composed of members that provide policy recommendations on legislative and regulatory issues. So throughout the month of August, the legislative committee held weekly teleconferences reviewing and discussing each of these comments that were recorded into our matrix here. And at the conclusion of the review, the legislative committee requested that the document be sent to all of our membership, 470 tribes, for a 30-day comment period. And our comment period ended last October. So next slide. And then after October, when all the comments were received from the membership, We updated our matrix with those comments, and then our legislative committee again held weekly teleconferences to review and discuss the comments from all the regions. We also went to the NCAI annual meeting in Sacramento last fall, and during their housing subcommittee on Tuesday, we also went over the matrix and where we were so far. And then last December, our legislative committee held a final meeting on the NAHASDA Reauthorization to make the final recommendations for our board of directors. And then in January, just a couple of weeks ago, the board of directors met to consider and to approve the final position on NAHASDA Reauthorization gathered from all of our members across the country during last spring and summer and fall. And what we've done is to kind of put this into a matrix. I have sent this off to Gwen Salt. Gwen is going to distribute this to their listserv and to any members on the board, on the webinar today. And the idea is kind of so that you can go step by step, or section by section, I should say, on what we collectively, by consensus, came up with. We think we have a pretty good starting point for this year to introduce into Congress our amended bill, and within the next couple of months. And as you know, from March to September, we're going to be advocating the bill's passage in Congress. There's going to be a number of hearings and roundtable discussions likely held by the authorizing committees of both the Senate Indian Affairs Committee as well as the Finance Committee in the House. So as Joe Garcia had said, you know, the deadline for reauthorization is coming up here in September. And I think our next steps that we really want to take on is to, first of all, talk with our members of Congress, Senate, and staffers, make sure we're all on the same page and that there are no snags in this passage, but also to report out to the tribal leaders, tribal council members, to make sure that they are fully aware of you know, the timelines and so on, and to get their recommendations and to Congress and so on to make sure that this NAHASDA reauthorization is passed into law by the end of the fiscal year. Okay, so that's what we've done here at the National American Indian Housing Council for the past year. I did want to ask you know, Cheryl Cosley or Sean Pensino, if you wanted to add anything. I know we kind of went through this process a little bit quickly, but if you wanted to review these PowerPoints, NCAI has graciously put these back up on their website at ncai.org. Cheryl or Sean, did you want to add anything to my brief presentation?
You guys both did a wonderful job, and I cannot convey the thanks that our membership feels for NCAI and the tribal leaders. It's the best shot we have of getting this done by this deadline is working hand in hand with them, because they command such respect, and they have such a large group of people that can advocate on the behalf of housing. I'm just so very, very grateful, Governor, for all of your assistance.
You're quite welcome.
All right, everyone. So that concludes the presentation. And if you have any questions, for those of you that are currently on the phone call, if you have any questions that you would like to ask any of the panelists, you can utilize the raise your hand option in the control pane, or you can type your question in the control box, and we can follow up from there. All right, seeing as that we don't have any questions that are currently being asked right now, I was wondering if anyone else wanted to make some closing statements.
Brian, can you still hear me? Yes, Joe?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I was looking at the timeline that we set for ourselves for this webinar, and we have exactly 25 minutes for questions and answers. So, Dave, I guess, and everyone, we did a pretty good job in getting through. Such a good job, they don't have any question, but I'm sure there will be as we move along, and I'm really, really excited and looking forward to the session that we'll have together next week.
Absolutely. I look forward to talking to you at great length, Joe, and appreciate you coming to our Tribal Impact Day to address our membership.
Sure.
And this is Gwen Spell from NCAI. I just wanted to, again, give my email address for those on the webinar. If you could forward your, if it's you or one of your colleagues, just email me at gspelt@ncai.org, and in the subject headline, please add to the NCAI NAHASDA listserv. I can go ahead and add you. And once we figure out with Chairman Garcia's schedule about when the next teleconference will probably most likely take place, it'd probably be next month, probably sometimes after the executive winter session, and hopefully we'll get a regularly scheduled teleconference call going, and we'll keep you informed of any new developments or and so forth, and we'll begin working. So I appreciate any for all you guys who are on the conference call participating on this webinar. Thank you.
I guess that's it, Brian.
Yeah, and just as a follow-up, we will be uploading the PowerPoint presentation recording of this to NCAI's YouTube channel, and I'll go ahead and share with Gwen, and she can kind of pass it on to everyone else that attended. So that way they'll have a copy of not only the PowerPoint slides, but as well as a recording of this event.
And also, we will also be attaching the matrix that NAIHC mentioned that they have been working on. So for those of you who have not been able to review it, we will definitely do it, and I've also sent it to the listserv as well. And no, we have still no questions in the queue, so if everybody, that's pretty much all I have to say. Chairman?
Will there be an attendee list so you can see who called in?
Yeah, I'll have a copy of all the emails from those that attended and those that registered. That way we'll be able to share all this information with those that may have not been able to attend the webinar session today as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all, and the rest of the week.
Thank you, Joe. I'll go ahead and conclude this session, and thank you all for attending.
Thank you.
All right.
Travels to all.